Hey everyone, this is Dylan Taggart here. I'm here with Tiffany Gray for 360 Insights latest HR Tech Chat. Tiffany has 20 years of experience in the payroll industry, including 11 with the state of Virginia. Currently, she's working at Riverside Health Systems as a payroll manager. And she's also an active member of PAYO and currently is the director of memberships at the Hampton Roads chapter of PAYO and has also done the some work on the Virginia Statewide Payroll Conference Board and currently sits as the secretary. There's so many things to mention about Tiffany, but I'm going to turn it over to her and have her tell you guys a bit about herself. But I'm very excited to have her here today.
Yes, hi Dylan. Good to see you this morning. Yes, I'm very active in the PAYO community. I sit on the Educational Advisory Committee as well as the Certification Item Development Task Force, which actually actively creates the questions for our CPP and our FPC exam. I also am part of the National Speakers Bureau, as well as a contributing writer to Paytech Magazine. So, I think I can certifiably say I'm a bit of a workaholic when it comes to payroll. I'm very excited about this chat with you today, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I can't wait to get into some of the topics we're going to talk about. The first being, how is it working at the state level? I know that you spent a lot of time there,
Yeah.
and what is one of the biggest takeaways you had from that time?
One of the biggest takeaways that I had was working within the Commonwealth of Virginia is the necessity of strong internal controls and strong policies and procedures. The best thing about being a centralized state agency or even a decentralized state agency is that the policies and the procedures that are followed by human resources as well as payroll are standard across the state. And so it's really easy to stand on policy or to have policy be your active backup for how you want to process or how you want to navigate processes and changes. So that's the one thing that I take away from state service. It's really helped me to streamline my processing in the private sector because the public sector procedures and policies are so strong and centralized.
Yeah, do you feel like the centralization of some of those policies makes it harder to implement new ideas, or and that may and
Yeah.
does it kind of create a bit of a slowdown with, or is it a good thing where it is a bit more of a slower move to change?
It is a slower move to change. It really just depends on how your agency. So if you're a centralized agency, then you're absolutely right. You are mainly stuck within the parameters of what this policy is. If you're a decentralized agency, then generally you have a bit more freedom to rework policies as your agency sees fit, as long as the outcome is, this virtually the same. But, when it comes to certain things like software implementation or reviewing internal controls or, just some of the reactive type of processes that we have as we're implementing new software, new technologies and things, that usually gives more to opening up the conversation to looking back at some of these procedures. But when it comes to customer service or when it comes to certain things as far as what my office is able to do and not do, then that's really where having strong internal controls and policy to back that up makes it much easier for my staff to say, this is what we can do or what we can't do, or this is how we can partner and not partner.
Interesting.
Mhm.
And I know now that you're working at Riverside Health Systems, which is a
Yes.
huge organization. I know when we talked previously, I was like dumbfounded with how you managed that number of people. So I know it's around 11,000 people. Is that correct?
Little under 11,000 employees. We have multiple facilities. And we also have multi-state remote workers, which always adds a layer of complexity on both the HR and payroll side. But it's not the biggest organization. However, in comparison to my team size, which I have a small team of four, um, It is a lot to, and we do process payroll internally. What that means is we do not outsource to a third party, vendor, or we do all of our processing on site. So for a team of my size, that can be very involved.
Yeah, the ratio of your team to the number of people working there is crazy for sure. But it sounds like you're doing a great job. Man, I know you do. One of the ways you go about doing this is by having a collaborative team. And what does
Yes.
that kind of look like in the structure, and how do you feel like that's added value to how you lead that team, and has it affected how you run payroll, etc.?
Yes, absolutely. So even though I have over 23 years of payroll experience, to have a collaborative team is incredibly important to me. Oftentimes, as you know, one thing that we're seeing in our space is more millennials, more Generation Z in the workplace. And so now, where we were talking pre-COVID about managing a multi-generational team, currently my team is all under 27. So I have a very green team, okay? And so they thrive in a more collaborative environment. And so my leadership style, generally, as I'm working with my team, is to work collaboratively with, I can't get that word today, Dylan, I am having a hard time, but to work with them in a collaborative environment. And what that means is trying to empower them to bring their experience, little as that may be, or even as much as it may be, to our team. And so currently I have someone on my staff that when we hired her, she fluently speaks French, and she had previous Workday experience. We're currently on Workday, and she had run Canadian payroll. And so one of my incentives in bringing her on in my team is to see what were some things that she had been exposed to, even though we're not operating a payroll out of Canada just yet, to see what her ideas were. How did she navigate that processing in Workday, and then use her knowledge, as well as prepare her for getting her Canadian payroll certification, which she could use later on in her career, even though she's very early on to it. So collaboratively, I'm looking for my team to say, this is not to just accept this is what we've always done, right? Or this is the way it's always been, but to come to the table and say, this process is really manual and it's really kind of tedious, and I don't feel like it's the best use of my time. Is there a way for us to improve that? Absolutely. And so I give them, the full access to our test tenants and things like that, to see how we can collaboratively improve our processes. And not only challenges my team to not just do their tasks, their day-to-day tasks, right, and just process payroll, but it makes them feel like they're actively improving their own duties. And they are in control of their own day. They're in control of their tasks. And for the employees that want me to work with them closely, and I do have a few employees like that, they want that constant feedback. Am I doing it great? Was that great? And I'm here to give that consistent feedback. And then I have other employees who are more, they're kind of like, if no news is good news, right? So I just work with them that way. And it has really made us a strong team. And it also gives us an opportunity, as I was talking a little bit earlier about being a part of state service, to make their audit eyes stronger. So they already know, because that's the one thing about working with the state, is that my audit eyes had to get very strong. And so they know what my expectation is. And then as we start to implement things on the team, like peer review, meaning that they're reviewing certain things before it even gets to my review, it really helps them to know what my expectation is, and also to be able to communicate, okay, this is what I did in this audit, this is how I changed it, and this is how I feel it's in a more efficient way, giving us the outcome with less time. I love outcomes like that. And so I give a lot of what we call care coins, or recognition coins, to my team when they do things like that, as well as when they provide customer service and when they go above and beyond. So it's been a really good strategy.
Yeah, it sounds like it's working really well.
Yeah.
And I think we had talked, in our previous conversations, we had talked about how communication silos can be an
Yes,
issue, and especially within large organizations where
yes,
a different department can seem miles away, even if
yes.
they're in the same building. And it sounds like that's a major what you're doing within your team is a major way to overcome that. But how does how do you then interact with a larger organization that may have that issue as a team? And how do you get your message
Yes.
across?
That's a great question, Dylan. And we do have a lot of communication silos in an organization. One, because we are 60% clinical, right? And so we have and our 60% of our worker population are not even on the HCM system because they have so many other systems that they have to manage, Epic and iCare and so many other systems just to get their daily tasks done. And so a lot of times with onboarding or with recruiting, there certain communication does not come down to my team. And then one thing I talked about is how do I create a proactive environment among my team, even though I'm a part of a very reactive establishment. And one way that we try to break down those communication silos and spark new conversation is that I have a standard for my team that we all say the exact same thing. And there's a reason why we do that. One, it's really hard to get in between a team that are all saying the exact same thing. And not only that, Dylan, one voice screaming on the side of the road is often disregarded, right? But once you start to add the more voices saying the exact same thing in the same volume, you start to become recognized and your message starts to be noticed, right? And so that's the strategy that I use to break down communication silos here in the organization. And it's been strategic, and it wasn't well received at first because there was no way to kind of get around us all saying the same thing. But once some of our partners, because to manage a payroll of this size, there are a lot of external data streams, right? Data streams from the timekeeping system, data streams from our retirement, data streams from our benefits, just so many external data streams. And what we needed was for internal review of all of those data streams prior to them attaching to the pay result. And so the one way that we could do that was by communicating, this is how we're auditing, this is how we like you to partner as you're auditing, and keep the communication going. And they knew we were going to ask the same questions every single time. And so just that consistency where it could be potentially irritating started to become more of a proactive approach to ensuring that our employees' pay remained accurate and remained timely. So that's a
Yeah, I
good
think that
strategy. Say the same thing
yeah, like no one
every
can.
time.
Yeah, I always remember what I heard someone say one time was that you know you don't have to ever think about what you said if you're not telling a lie. You know
Right.
what I mean? And it's kind of the same
Yes.
thing. It's like, well, if you have a unified message, and that's the policy, no one can ever be
Yes.
like, well, so and so said. Well, it's like, nah, it's not really the way we work.
Right.
So, you
It's
know,
hard to get between. It's like the toddler that asks why, right? So it's like, well, why is the sky blue? Oh, the sky is blue because atmosphere goes through the raindrops. Okay, but why? And then, what does that parent do after the fifth why? You're like, well, gosh, I have to either make these answers more intelligent or I have to shut it down. And we never want to shut down our toddler, right? So this is the exact same strategy. For every why, or for every layer of information, we're giving the same answer, and we're trying to keep our tone upbeat, and we're trying to remain with a positive interaction and positive engagement, and it's really helped us to gain more partnership and more accountability and break down some of these communication silos and create more of a proactive environment, even though we're used to being reactive.
yeah, for sure. And payroll is so, as I've mentioned to you before in our previous conversation that um payroll is fine and no one really thinks about it until it goes wrong. It's one of those things. It's like
Yes.
when the traffic lights stop working. You're like, that doesn't, it's not, you don't think about it until, you don't think about how traffic lights work until they're not working. Really.
Absolutely.
And payroll is kind of the same, because when it goes wrong, it does have a massive like domino effect in people's
Yes.
lives. And it's very individual, it's very personal, which I
Yes.
heard you say before. And, it trickles into people's personal lives, and a payroll problem becomes then like a employee experience problem, workforce
Yes.
management problem, a retention problem, your
Yes.
recruiting, it just bleeds into everything, because it is so personal, and it feels almost, when it goes wrong, it feels like you were singled out for something. I think we've
That's
all
it.
had an experience like that. Whether or not that's true or not, it does feel like, you feel offended for some reason when your pay doesn't go right. But
Absolutely.
how do you kind of deal with that in such a large organization where you have, there's going to be errors, even if it's 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000, that's still in an
Yes.
organization your size, one or a couple people. So how do you go about doing that? And how do you make it seem like you're addressing it in a personal way that doesn't just feel like you're some part of a big organization,
Yes.
faceless organization?
Faceless, exactly. Well, even though we have a very large employee population, my team works really hard, one, to just try to avoid as many errors as we possibly can. So, my standard for auditing payroll processing is very high, and I'm just going to be here to admit that, as an accountant, as someone who is very very committed to accuracy. I do require that of my team. So, just some of the old school checks and balances there. If they're, payroll is a highly transactional, highly data entry driven industry. Okay. Even on the most automated level. So even if we're talking about, APIs, integrations, interfaces, and things like that, sometimes those things don't attach. Sometimes though, technology works until it doesn't work, right? It's just like we have an app that we've used a million times and we're finally in the store. And as soon as we open it up, that's the time it needs to upgrade, right? So it's like, oh, I need this to work in the moment. And that's kind of how we process. So I do have a very high standard for accuracy. But the other thing that we do, again, other than saying the same thing, sticking to our policies and procedures, is kind of what we talked about earlier. We work really hard to build our chatbots and our virtual assistants into more of a conversational AI tool. Okay. And so the biggest challenge to that was really trying to drill down into our employees' cadence. And so I took my staff in our ticketing system. These are all of the types of questions that we get generally after payroll. This is kind of, formalizing a standardization of how they're asking those questions, and then making the generative dialogue smarter. And that has really helped us a lot. But also, my employees, we are committed to ensuring that we're responding to our employees within the 24 to 48 turnaround time. They know that they're going to get a response. It's going to be comprehensive. We've worked on job aids and things like that. But one thing that we're finding is people don't have time to even read the aids that you've created to help them with their issue. And so taking that aid and breaking it down into more of a dialogue as they're asking their questions helps employees to feel like they're able to get to a certain response. And then we're able, when we're building some of that dialogue, to kind of project comprehensively what an acceptable response would be, right? And so working with that interaction, working with our HR support team so that employees feel like there is just a database of their questions and responses. And then also, if needed, they can pick up the phone and we will call them back timely. So all of that has helped to establish a strong relationship with our employees. But as I always say, our first client is the organization, right? The organization, keeping it compliant, making sure we're avoiding tax penalties and just, labor discrepancies and things like that. That's our first obligation. But as far as the employee, how do we navigate the employee experience and keep it positive, even if we have to tell them information they don't want to hear, Dylan. One, we try to remain consistent. We try to promptly respond. I always talk about in our customer service, we use our heart. We are here to hear, be empathetic, apologize, respond timely, and then thank them for their time. And that's a strategy that has really helped my team. And then even when we're having to give them information like, we're legally required to comply with this garnishment, I understand it is an inconvenience. And so I just train my team to understand, just like you said, pay is very personal to employees. Their frustration really isn't with us as individuals, but more with the fact that this is a situation that is kind of out of our control. And you know how hard it is to deal with situations that are out of our control and just follow a certain steps and outcomes. So that's kind of how we navigate that. We're constantly working on that to improve that. And to improve the employee experience. And oftentimes we find employees, if you speak to them respectfully, if you are empathetic, and if you try to remain upbeat, they will generally give you the grace to help resolve the issue and keep it out of that negative frame.
Yeah, I think that's really important because I think talking to someone just makes it seem like, yeah, listen, it was an issue, but it's not, but
Right.
it's not a big deal. I think especially someone like yourself, I feel like you'd be good at like quelling someone's fears about or apprehensions about it, and assuring that it's going to be made better, whatever way it can. But I do know you mentioned you use a chat bot with the system
Mhm.
that people can interact with.
Yes.
What is that, and what has the reception been like?
Well, we're working within the help bot within Workday, and I've been working with the HR support team to, like I said, build more of a generative dialogue within that space. And it's been for those who, it's so funny because we're trying to get more of our clinical population to engage with us in Workday. You can engage with your HR support person. You can engage with your HR business partner. You can, change your payment elections. There's so many things you can do these days in the self-service environment, but employees don't necessarily have a need to do that until something's wrong. And then there's an urgency for them to kind of learn and navigate all those things and get an answer to their question. And so what we've been trying to do is encourage them to, hey, you don't have to wait, putting our, like, for example, putting their W-2 document within Workday so that they can access it anytime they need, right? Because most people wait till the last minute to report their taxes. And if you have separated from your employer a year ago, you're not thinking about needing access to that, right? Until it's too late. So what we usually do is we're trying to, like I said, just kind of project comprehensively what their anticipated response is going to be. So right around April or March, we know there's going to be a lot of traction for a request for W-2 information, or I need this to be changed. I'm looking at this. I didn't have enough taxes come out. That's a huge question that we get around that time. And so building the responses and making it more in dialogue. So, okay, my federal, so something we may get is my federal taxes are not correct. I did not have enough withheld. I need help. And so our generative AI dialogue would say something like, okay, we can help you with that. Were you given instructions by your tax accountant as far as how you would like to change your elections for the current year? And then they would say yes or no. And so then the bot would take them to, this is how you change your elections. Was this helpful? No. Is this the solution that you need? No. Okay, not a problem. Just different things like that have really helped us. And then there's a point where they can often just request to speak to one of my staff or request an appointment or something like that. And so we're kind of finding that people want that option right away. But what we're trying to do is educate them to the point where you have full control over your tax elections. You have full control over your direct deposit elections. Go ahead and make that, stay in the driver's seat and make those changes. So we've kind of had to move that I want to talk to someone right now, down a little bit to see. And then that also gives my staff the data to understand really how they can help them, you know?
For sure. Yeah, I feel like I am kind of one of those people that it's always like I just want to talk to someone. I'm pressing the operator button 3,000 times to
Yeah.
talk to someone on the
Yeah.
phone. But I
And that
think it
makes a
goes back to
really,
that.
that's
Sorry, go
an
ahead.
interesting point, Dylan. I think our workers can get a little bit tired of automated responses. You know what I mean? Automated responses in our banking, automated responses in every aspect of our lives. Even something as simple as Instacart, you know, or if you're doing something DoorDash, you have to talk to a automated system before you get a person. So I think sometimes there's some fatigue with that. And we try to stay sensitive to that.
Absolutely. No, it's a really good point. And I think a lot of that has to kind of goes back to your point about like having an empathetic kind of
Mhm.
reaction to these things where a lot of times I think even if it's not even merited
Yes,
to have the attention, I think sometimes people just want to feel seen and heard about these things. And
absolutely.
when the first thing is a chatbot or an AI, it feels a bit dystopian for that moment where you're just like, I can't even talk to a person. Why is this happening? Uh,
Right.
but whether or not that's a valid way to look at the situation, I think having someone's ear, you know,
Yes,
is uh is vital. I feel like it gives immediately gives someone reassurance.
it does.
And obviously
And
that can go wrong, but it does help mostly.
yes, you know, in the payroll environment, you have 80% of a chance of this interaction starting off on a negative connotation already. And so the first thing, and this takes some time with my staff, because when someone is being irate with you, when someone has a tone where they're not even really, they don't even really want to hear what you have to say because they're already upset that this has happened. It takes a lot of de-escalation and patience in an individual to get them to the place where they're able to hear. And there are often times where I, even as the payroll manager for my team, I've done everything I possibly can to appease this person, and I still have to escalate it, you know? And so but as you said, just the reassurance of having someone else on the other line gives that individual a couple things, an understanding that their pay is just as important to us as it is to them, that we're actively working towards some type of resolution, you know. And so that's just something we were not able to duplicate, you know, with that chatbot, right? But there were also people who were like, well, if I could have just found this online, I wouldn't have even had to call. Got a lot of that type of feedback as well. So we just want employees to have all resources, right? All access to all information, whether that's in an online reservoir database or a knowledge base, or if it is talking to somebody individually or in person.
Right. And just to clarify, Workday is your HCM system overall.
Yes. Yes,
And
they are HCM system. We do use UKG Chronos for our timekeeping.
okay.
Mhm.
And for Workday, have you had a dialogue with them at all about like kind of the kind of environment, well, you want to create at in your workplace that they've been receptive to kind of tweak the
Yes.
system in order to better serve, I guess, your employees.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I had the pleasure of attending Workday Rising for the first time back in 2023 in San Francisco. And one thing that I really love about this conference is that it's highly driven for the users, you know, and not only that, potential users. I can't tell you how many people were there. They were like, oh, yeah, we're not even on Workday, but we come every year. It's just like that. What does that say about the influence in this space? But you are able to schedule brain dates and work with experts on site during the conference with some of the solutions that you need. And so, and coming back from that conference, I was able to deploy certain solutions with our HCM internal support team that really enhanced our employee experience. Like I was saying, bringing, you know, we do use a third party for our W-2 distribution, but also having that secondary distribution within Workday was incredibly helpful to the employee because they didn't feel like they had to follow 15 steps to get to their document, just a few, right? And I didn't realize how important clicks were to get to, and you don't even think about it, Dylan, like even with something as simple as paying your bills, we don't even realize how much the one click technology has spoiled us until you have to do more than one click to get to your expected outcome. And so, yes, I do think that they work actively. And then there's a lot of, we have some other third-party vendors that work in collaboration with Workday that also deliver things like tax compliance, I-9 compliance, and things like that. So I hadn't worked prior to this position in Workday, but I am very pleased, and I am actively looking to make it a better experience, not only for just my staff, but for the employees as well.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like it's working pretty well, and it sounds like you're
Yeah.
making it work better, I think, just by the way you
Yeah.
talk about it. And I think your approach is, it sounds like it has not a lot of potential, because I feel like it's already hitting that potential, but it has a lot of overall, I think, like the overall way you approach it is just very important. I think if more people took on that approach, I think there'd be a lot of potential for just a better interaction, because it seems like you're really, really trying to focus on the person, even though it's maybe an organizational problem. And I
Yes.
think, you know, the potential for that at a broader scale is huge. And I'm sure within your position too, I'm sure there's new areas that you haven't discovered, but I think
Yeah.
you've really hit on a couple things that are really important, and not everyone really gets,
Well, Dylan, payroll doesn't often get an opportunity to sit at the table. Okay. Specifically, and I think we talked about this in our previous conversation. C-suite makes a lot of decisions. And so one thing that I do encourage when I'm speaking at chapters and different things is if payroll gets an opportunity at the table, we really want you to take it, because it really takes about 3 to 4 years to normalcy after you've implemented a timekeeping system or even an HCM system. Okay. Because that first year, you're just trying to parallel what you did previously in the other system. That next year, you're really starting to see some of the outliers that you weren't able to duplicate in testing scenarios. And so you're really starting to get to know that system. And then in that third year is really where you're starting to understand what the upgrades, how they apply, how to improve your system utilization among your team and among the various areas. And so it's not until like that 3 or 4 year post implementation that you really start to create a plan to access and utilize that system and not just work for the system, right? And I think a lot of times in our industry, we really get stuck in year one and year two, just trying to duplicate what we've always done and just make sure the numbers work, right? And so me as more of an innovative leader, I'm looking to know what the system is going to do, anticipate the outcome, but also improve the experience for my staff, right? And so when everyone started to talk about machine learning and AI and conversational AI and things like that, we in the payroll industry didn't quite understand what that impact was going to be to us and to our teams. But being able to embrace it early on, it really gave me an advantage to work with the HCM Workday support team and then put us at the table to say, these are some of our compliance concerns that should overall be the organization's concerns. How can we leverage this technology to create a more proactive approach? And that was, because really it's all about the bottom line, right? It's not necessarily about my team working 1,000 hours or the fact that I have a small team. Really, it's about the overall impact to the organization. And so that's really been very helpful to put
for
payroll at
sure.
the table.
Yeah, definitely. It makes a big difference when you have a voice. And
Right.
yeah. But just to wrap up,
Yes.
because it's been a great chat. Just if there's anywhere people can find you, is there certain outlets that they should reach out to you on, or any? I know you have some
Yes.
articles coming out.
Absolutely. Reach out to me via LinkedIn. Very exciting. You'll find me at Tiffany L. Gracie PP. And of course, the hrpayo.com is my local chapter, Hampton Roads Payroll Association, a payroll org chapter, excuse me. We're still transitioning, Dylan. And then, yes, I have a couple articles linked in Paytech at magazine. I talk about garnishment compliance. My latest article was in the April issue that talks about how to implement a pay card program at your organization. I'm currently working with the Dapper Ryan Yanetta at SHRM and CPP. We're going to be coming out with an article later this year about, social media and building your brand and things. So, but Dylan, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been a great chat. I love it.
My pleasure. It's been great picking your
Time.
brain, and I
Yes.
feel like there's a lot more to talk about, but maybe we'll have it back on another time.
Yes, absolutely. I
All
love
right.
it.
Thanks everyone for tuning in, and thank you, Tiffany, for joining us.